Now that our grandchild is born, I suggested, let's have a baby shower. Since it's your first grandchild, please be generous with the gift money. Smiling, I handed over an envelope with some cash, only to get a sharp reply, just $300? Don't insult me, that won't even cover diapers. She looked shocked, her face turning pale and trembling. My name is Olivia, a 57-year-old office worker. My husband, John, runs an auto repair shop with our son-in-law, Mason, who is married to our eldest daughter, Ava. They specialize in luxury cars, and business is booming because they get a lot of work from dealerships and charge high fees for repairs and inspections. Mason often tells John cheerfully, "You're great at business. I want to learn from you and work hard, too." Mason and Ava got married 5 years ago. Mason used to work a regular office job but loved cars. He got his mechanic's certification and started working with John. We don't live with them, but since Ava started working as a secretary at the shop, we see them almost every day. The shop is close to our house, so I often drop by, and the four of us spend time together. Mason is friendly and easy to talk to, and he feels like family. We do have a son, William, but we rarely see him since he moved away for his job. William is 2 years younger than Ava and never showed interest in John's shop. After college, he joined a regular company. When he was younger, he used to say, "I'll take over Dad's shop when I grow up," but as he got older, he changed his mind, saying, "You can't make a living working at a repair shop these days, and I don't want to be covered in grease." John never pressured William to take over, but he did feel a bit sad when William said he wouldn't. John had already hired a few employees and was considering what to do with the shop if there was no one to take it over. He planned to tell the employees in advance if they needed to look for other jobs, but with Mason now in the picture, John felt he could leave the shop to someone capable. Ava was surprised, but also relieved, when Mason decided to take over. I knew Mason loved cars, but I never thought he'd become my dad's apprentice and take over the shop, she said, since William never planned to take it over. It's fine, right? With the shop doing so well, Ava sometimes wonders if William will ever ask to run it himself. Ava had good reason to worry, as William's wife, Emma, could be difficult. William and Emma got married 2 years ago, and she made quite an impression the first time they came to our house to introduce her. The moment Emma arrived with William, she looked around and said, "This is a very blue-collar home, isn't it? Is this what homes of self-employed people are like?" My husband and I were so shocked that we didn't know what to say. Ava, who was also there, was furious and immediately snapped back. "Who do you think you are to talk like that to your fiancé's parents?" But Emma didn't back down and replied, "I'm just being honest. Stop picking on me before we're even married." I tried to calm them down and move on with the introductions, but it was tense. Then William added, "Just because we're getting married doesn't mean we'll rely on you or live here." It seemed like William wasn't happy about Mason working at the shop and getting along well with us. Ever since Ava and Mason got married, William had been pulling away from us even more. Mason had stayed away that day to avoid any tension, but William made a snide comment, "So Ava's husband isn't here? Good. I'd be embarrassed if he showed up all greasy and dirty like usual." He seemed bothered by the fact that Mason, who isn't a blood relative, was going to take over the shop. Hearing William's remarks, I felt anger rise and shot back, "Are you jealous of Mason? You were the one who said you didn't want to take over your father's shop." As I raised my voice, my calm husband stepped in, saying, "Let's not get angry. Since William's fiancée is here, let's try to get along." Realizing this was supposed to be a happy occasion, I bit back my frustration and stayed quiet. But then Emma added, "I don't care. I have no intention of getting along with any of you. Anyway." Emma spoke to us as though she looked down on us. Both Ava and I, who had started to calm down at my husband's words, felt angry again. We gave Emma stern looks, but she just seemed amused. "You common folk get angry so easily," she said cheerfully. "I'm from an upper-class family, so I've never felt the need to get angry." She kept bragging about her background. From what William told us, Emma's father is the director of a large company. Maybe that's why she calls us common folk. The thought of her becoming our daughter-in-law weighed heavily on us. Even my husband, who usually stayed calm, seemed to think this meeting wasn't going well, so he suggested, "Why don't we wrap this up for today, since this was just meant as an introduction?" Emma and William left quickly after that. After they left, Ava was still furious. "Who does that woman think she is? Just because her father is a company director, she thinks she can act better than everyone else." Even my husband, who had been trying to keep the peace, seemed shaken and said, "William has a tough person to marry. I'm worried about what's coming." He sighed and shared some of the trouble he'd had with Emma during the wedding planning. The day before the wedding, Emma had come over and said to him, "Since you work at a mechanic shop, please make sure to wash thoroughly and dress appropriately for the wedding, future father-in-law. And you," she turned to Ava, "you know you're not very attractive, so at least dress decently so you don't embarrass me." She said it with a snide tone. I was about to snap at her, but my husband responded calmly, "Understood, we'll make sure not to cause any trouble." Emma looked surprised, probably expecting an angry reaction. Instead, she seemed a bit unsettled by his calm response and left looking dissatisfied. At the wedding the next day, Emma came up to our family and said, "It's embarrassing for everyone to know we're related, so please behave yourselves. And by the way, this area smells oily, must be because of you." Emma continued her usual snide remarks. Mason, who was meeting her for the first time, observed with a look of surprise. "I'd heard she could be difficult, but she's worse than I expected." Normally, Mason has long, messy hair and a beard, but for the wedding, he had cut his hair and worn a suit, so Emma had no complaints about him. Secretly, I wished he'd come in his usual work clothes, just to see how Emma would react. After the wedding, we didn't hear from William at all. Concerned, I said, "I wonder if William is doing okay." My husband replied, "No news probably means he's fine, but if we contact him, his wife might get angry. Let's wait until they reach out to us." Since they had made it clear they didn't want much contact with us, we held back. 2 years went by without a single word from William. Still, Emma's behavior at the wedding came up in conversations when my husband, Ava, Mason, and I got together for meals. Mason joked, "I don't think Emma even knew who I was at the wedding, no one introduced me, so she probably thought I was just some dirty relative." Laughing, I replied, "If you'd come in your work clothes with your messy hair and beard, she might have kicked you out." We all had a good laugh over that. By this point, Mason had blended into the family completely, and it truly felt like we had a wonderful son, even without William around. Then, one day, there was a heavy snowfall, and cars got stuck all over. My husband's shop was flooded with requests for help, so the employees divided up the work. My husband and Mason went out on a job for a foreign car dealer. When they returned, though, they both seemed downcast. Ava asked Mason if something had happened, but he just said, "It's nothing," so we didn't think too much of it. A few days later, William and Emma showed up at our house out of the blue, and Emma was holding a baby in her arms. Seeing the baby asleep, I couldn't help but smile, and Ava, who happened to be visiting, smiled and said, "Emma, you had a baby." She reached out to touch him, but Emma quickly pulled the baby away and snapped, "Don't touch her with your dirty hands, that oil smell will rub off." The sight of the baby had briefly softened us, but Emma's rude comment reminded us she hadn't changed at all. Then Emma announced, "Now that our child is born, let's have a baby shower. Since this is your first grandchild, be generous with the gift money." Her tone was as sarcastic as always. I quickly grabbed $300, put it in an envelope, and handed it to her. If I'd known they were coming, I would have prepared more, but they arrived so suddenly that I didn't have a chance. Emma snatched the envelope, checked it immediately, and shouted, "Are you kidding me? Only $300? That's not even enough for diapers." Emma was acting rude as usual, but this time, my usually calm husband suddenly snapped. He took the envelope back from her, saying, "Don't disrespect us. Is that baby even William's?" His voice was loud and fierce, unlike anything I'd heard from him before. I was shocked, especially by his suggestion that the baby's father wasn't William. Hearing his raised voice, Mason came out from the back room, looking confused, but when he saw Emma, he seemed stunned, and Emma looked startled as well. Quickly trying to hide her face, my husband continued, addressing Emma, "Recognize Mason? He was the one who towed your fancy minivan during the heavy snowfall. You complained to him the whole time. I bet you haven't forgotten his face." Ava, William, and I were completely baffled. My husband added, "And how's the president you were with that day? If he's going to have an affair, maybe he shouldn't do it in a snowstorm, or he's bound to get caught." Hearing the word affair, William's face went pale, and Ava and I looked at each other, shocked. Emma tried to deny it, saying, "What are you talking about? The snow, the affair, it doesn't make any sense," but she was clearly flustered, unlike her usual confident self. Then, at my husband's signal, Mason took out his phone and started pulling up some footage. My husband explained to us, during that heavy snowfall, Emma and some company president got stranded in a luxury minivan. Mason and I went to help. I didn't recognize Emma at first because I was wearing a mask, sunglasses, and a helmet, but Mason, with his long hair and beard, must have been memorable even with a mask on. Mason then showed his phone screen to Emma. She gasped and immediately turned her face away. Ava, William, and I looked at the footage. There was Emma, with a man we didn't know, angrily telling Mason to hurry up, saying, "We have a baby in the car, move it, already." Meanwhile, my husband and Mason were putting snow chains on the minivan as Emma and the man whispered to each other. With a grim look, my husband said, "The dash cam doesn't record sound, but I heard everything. They were saying William was a fool for believing the baby was his." "Well, Emma, you're the real fool for talking about your affair right in front of your father-in-law without realizing it." William, looking furious, shouted, "Emma, is this true?" Emma stammered, "Of course it's not, it's all lies," but her pale face said otherwise. Mason then added, "Didn't you say something like divorce him at the right time and that you'd get child support? You sounded quite pleased about it." Emma started trembling, holding the baby tightly, who then began to cry, using the crying baby as an excuse. Emma snapped, "Look what you did. The baby's crying because you're all being so mean. I'm leaving." She stormed out, leaving William behind. He was furious, but seemed to calm down once she left. Finally, he turned to his dad and asked, "Is all this really true?" His father nodded silently. Mason then added, "Emma's lover is the president of a company that does business with us. I heard from some dealers that she went with him when he bought that minivan, for their baby." William felt devastated when he learned the full story. He buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed. Later, a DNA test confirmed his worst fears. The child was not his. William immediately filed for divorce, but Emma, angry and defiant, shouted that marrying a commoner like him had been a mistake. However, the drama wasn't over. Surprisingly, the test showed that the child's father wasn't the wealthy president either. It was another man, one who was married. This revelation left everyone even more shocked. Emma had been unfaithful with yet another person, and this man, not the president, was the father. In the divorce proceedings, William not only demanded compensation from Emma but also sought damages from both of her lovers. Emma's family, who had always boasted of their high-class lifestyle, turned out not to be as wealthy as they'd claimed. They even had to borrow money to pay the required compensation. Emma's affair with the president had been driven by her desire for an affluent lifestyle, but her dreams of remarrying him were shattered. Instead, he sued her for breach of engagement, ending any chance she had of a fresh start with him. After divorcing Emma, William became wary of relationships and firmly declared, "I'll never get married again," choosing instead to live alone. As for my husband and me, our dream of having a first grandchild was shattered, but life took a happier turn when we learned that Ava was expecting a baby. We were overjoyed, and Mason, with a playful grin, reassured my husband, "Don't worry, this one's definitely mine." With the baby on the way, we decided that Ava and Mason would move in with us. We look forward to a lively, love-filled home with our soon-to-be grandchild.